sound went away.
Alrighty, that's a good intro, right?
Yeah, I think it's about as good as it's gonna get.
So happy 4th of July, everyone.
Yeah.
We are here. We are dressed to impress. And
Thank you.
looking sharp there, Carlos.
Thank you.
All your gear, and Uncle Sam stopped by. I love it.
As the episode progresses, I'll start taking stuff off as I get hot.
No, this is amazing. So yeah, so as you guys can see, this is a special 4th of July episode that we're doing for you guys, and we are bringing a very compact content with tons of updates for you guys, especially for our military in lieu of today's special day. So
thank you for your service.
Thank you all for your service, and thank you for your support. If you say that to me too. Yeah,
well, that's why I said thank you for your service. It applied to you and all the other service members.
And all the service members out there. Yes, that's awesome. So today we are going to be discussing, like I said, some market updates, what's going on with the housing market in the eyes of actually the National Association of Realtors. We're going to be presenting to you guys some comments directly from the chief analyst, Dr. Yoon. We're also going to be bringing out tons of updates that are being done within the VA guidelines for the veterans out there, which is pretty exciting. It's all for the best, thank goodness. So we're going to.
But before we continue,
yes,
like, share, and follow for more.
Right there. Yes, we like to bring you as much content and good information as we can. So if you like and share, you're going to share and follow, you're going to get some more information like that. And our information is in the bottom there too. So if you need to contact us directly, please feel free to do so. Now, before we get started with all of that excitement, we're going to have our myth of the day as usual. And today, the myth is VA and USDA can both get 6% seller's assistance. And I know for a fact,
wrong.
A lot of realtors out there are going to say, but that's true. No, it ain't.
Not technically.
Not legally on paper for like lender guidelines. So, I'll let you explain this one, Carlos. This is your jam.
Oh, thank you. So nice of you. Okay, yeah. So that's not true. The actual cap for seller's assist on a VA is 4%. However, there are certain things that we can do when we're structuring the negotiations, so that the service member is able to get a little bit more in assistance when it comes to their closing costs. There are things like the seller, we can have the seller pay up to a certain amount of the credit cards for the buyer to help them qualify if there's a DTI issue or something. We can also have the seller pay the transfer tax for the buyer, and that doesn't count as seller's assist. So that kind of helps them also with a little bit more towards closing costs. So 4% is the number, but there are exceptions, to the rule.
Yeah. And then just to kind of clarify to agents out there, you can still structure your offer, let's say, not that, it's happening right now in our industry, or at least not in central Pennsylvania, that we're getting that much seller's assistance, but you could still structure that you're getting 6% seller's assistance. It's just that on the lender side, they're going to have to position those credits differently because on paper, it needs to be a max of 4%. Yep. But like he said, he can allocate those funds differently, being paid by the seller to complete the 2% additional. It's just that technically it's 4%. But it can go even high. You can go 9%, right? Depending on what
you do it right, you can.
Yeah, but it's all about the proper allocation of funds on the back end by the lender. So yes, we can get more assistance for the veteran, but on paper, technically, it's 4%. Now, USDA, FHA, those you actually can specifically get 6% seller's assistance directly from seller to buyer to cover closing costs. That is clear cut. For VA, it's 4, but there's technically a lot more that could be included.
And you can also do the same thing on USDA and FHA, where to help the buyer out, you can have the seller pay the transfer tax as well on these loans, and is not considered part of the seller's assist. So it just helps when the buyer is a little bit short. Let's say there's some repairs needed, and so that the buyer has money left over at the end, the seller will say, hey, listen, if I lower the sales price, it's really not going to lower your cash to close. But if I do this, it'll lower your cash to close, and now you can take that money and make those repairs that you need to make on the property.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's all out there. In our market as of today, that's a little bit more challenging to do because the competitiveness, the lack of inventory, amount of buyers is still buying. So we're not seeing that as
one
often.
clarification, those are repairs that are not on the appraisal, because those need to be done prior to. But repairs that are on the inspection, that's when we can do things like that. That's when you can kind of get creative and do that. But if the repair is on the appraisal, it has to be done before it closes, unless the seller's going to be taking care of it. And then depending on what it is, you can do like escrow holdbacks and that kind of stuff, also.
To put it towards, like, if it's winter time and can't really paint.
Exactly.
So they can allocate funds to be done
Right. Yep.
So all that really good information, just so you guys know, then that's a myth, but it's technically misconcepted because you really can actually get 6 or more. It's just that it's not technically 6. Alrighty.
That is very true. Yep.
So in lieu of 4th of July, our first segment of this episode today is going to be all about the new VA loan updates, which there are a ton of them. And I'm going to try to condensate today. And Carlos is going to be chiming in with me and, explaining it further. But it's all, trying to empower the veterans to do better in this new market with all the new guidelines that we have as of today.
Right. And the help they get, because they were, they're service members, you know what I mean? Like that, exactly. A lot of them don't know about.
Yeah, some things people just don't know. It's old news, right? But some of them are news that we need to share because it's just not known by the public and even by agents, to be honest, because some things are just brand new coming into place right now.
Right.
One curious thing, and since we are doing 4th of July special, it's nice to mention. So the VA GI Bill, it's been in place since 1944. So since then, veterans have already been benefiting from VA benefits to acquire home ownership and make that more accessible for all veterans. So that's been in place for a long time. Which is amazing, to see that it's been still going on. Of course, it has been revamped, changed, transformed in so many ways throughout the years. And I think for the most part, it's for the best. Of course, VA guarantees does not lend directly. It's through other lenders. I think that's a pretty big misconception for the consumer in public, right? They think that they're getting a VA benefit from VA, like they're getting the loan from the VA. But no, the VA loan is a product that can be offered by any lender, like Carlos, for you guys to work with him. So it's not a VA thing. It's not the VA lending money. It's a VA product with VA guidelines that the lenders can provide to the consumer, to the public. Do you want to expand on that? You think?
I think you pretty much covered it, and it all depends on, since we're going into the whole updates thing now, it used to be where only spouses was able to be on the VA loan, and now based on what we were kind of looking into the other day, is that you can have non-spouse be on it. It's just that the VA guarantee isn't 100%. They'll have to come up with something. The VA only guarantees, like, it's only half of the guarantee that the VA normally does.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we kind of wanted to even get some I guess, clarification of what the guarantee is and what the entitlement percentage is for that veteran. But it is a very good change.
Option. Yeah.
Yeah, because now, like, if you are buying with your spouse, but you're not married yet, you are still able to try to qualify together to use the VA benefit, but, just with a lower entitlement. Or maybe a son is buying with the father, and
Yeah. Like we have.
yeah, we have a few different situations like that. So I think it's going to be very beneficial for people that are in those situations, for sure. And
Absolutely.
one thing that a lot of people don't realize is, because it used to be back in the day that you could only use your VA loan to purchase the home one time, right? It was a one-time use. So people are always saving that VA benefit to buy the forever home, right?
Yep.
That is no longer the case. Now you can actually use your VA benefit multiple times. And they're in fact now allowing multiple VA loans to be held at the same time. I'm not sure how the entitlement is going to work on that just yet.
Yeah, so it's bonus entitlement. I did one.
Did look into that?
Yeah, no, I actually did. I actually just closed one, maybe I want to say last month or the month before that.
Okay.
Where they were able to do it, and the veteran came out of pocket with very little money.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to what they were buying, they came, I think, paying off debt and some other things that had to be added, in order to make everything work. I think it was a $300,000 home, and I think they ended up coming to closing with like 12 or 15,000.
Oh wow, yeah.
And that was paying off like, I think it was like $7,000 or $8,000 in credit card.
Credit card, yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of using the VA.
So yeah.
Yeah. So now you can buy a home, buy another home later on, but you can also hold the VA loan at the same time for more than one home. So let's say you buy a home this year, next year you want to buy another home, but you want to keep the first home as a rental. Now you are allowed to keep multiple VA loans active.
And then what you can do is, like, once the rates come down, because like say they just relocated now, they're probably going to be there for at least like 3 to 5 years before they're moved somewhere else. So by then the rates will be better. What you can do then is you can take your first loan, refinance it into a DSCR, free up that VA, and now go and buy your third home with VA again. Yeah. Because you released the entitlement from the first.
Well, so that's the biggest change, Carlos, that they are actually allowing you to hold more than one VA active at the same time.
Right, but you can only get so much. So like once you're probably going to be maxed out at 2, maybe 3, you know what I mean? But like
from the entitlement, yes.
For the entitlement, but veteran, like I'll use, like I have family member, you know what I mean, who's been in New York, Florida, and now they're going to Alabama,
Yeah.
Or Louisiana. Sorry. Oh. But anyways, the point is that, so New York didn't do anything, but they could have, they didn't. But then they got Florida, and now, they might get Louisiana, but then they're probably going to get moved to Texas in like 2 years or so. And when that happens, then they can take their Florida, refinance it into an investment, and then free up that benefit, and now they can buy in Texas again.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that's a smart entitlement.
Yeah, the beauty of that now is that it gives that military member more options moving forward, right? So you're not just like stuck to buying one house and then having to sell the house to free up the VA benefit to buy another house. Now, depending on your market, of course, because some markets are higher than others, right? You might be able to get, like you said, 2-3 homes with your one entitlement, and then free up if you want to get others. But it gives you the opportunity to buy more than one home and build wealth using the VA benefit, which before was not an option.
Exactly. So like if the service member, ever wanted to like get into like real estate, cash flow and that kind of stuff, like that's a great way to do it. I'm not trying to recruit anybody for any military brand.
Be mine.
But, it's one way to get a lot of houses.
I know.
Money down.
Yes. The other thing that a lot of people maybe don't know of, and honestly should be a very good way of using creative financing per se, is the assumption. So VA loans, they are assumable. So let's say, and I'm going to explain this because people might get confused. It has to be from a VA to another VA. If it's not to another VA, then that person is not going to have a guarantee, like entitlement for the property. The entitlement is never released. But if it's from VA to VA, then it makes more sense for that VA seller to sell the home, right, as an assumable mortgage to another VA buyer.
Yep.
But with the benefit of that is, if you are a seller and you have a 3.5% interest rate that we're not seeing anymore for a while, then you have a buyer coming in and this happens. Yeah, exactly. That happens to be VA as well. Now they can assume the remainder mortgage at the 3.5% interest rate that previous owner had, and then the remainder of your purchase price could be another loan, like a second position mortgage with today's interest rates. But now that buyer is saving thousands because they're getting a substantial amount of the loan at a very, very reduced interest rate. So VA assumable mortgage is a thing, and it is a very interesting option if you are selling a VA, seller home to potentially another VA buyer. I wouldn't necessarily suggest to do that with a non-VA buyer because of the entitlement issue being tied into the home. It makes no sense for that seller to sell at that point because they're going to have a home that doesn't belong to them tied in with entitlement tied to it without being able to use it in a different home.
Right.
So it wouldn't make sense. But
unless it was like, family, you know what I mean? And then
if it's a family member,
then like say it's your kid who's a civilian, you know what I mean? Then you can do it that way.
Exactly. Now we're going to transition maybe a little bit into eligibility, because there was some changes made into that realm for veterans as well. I think the biggest one being, so I used to be a reservist myself, National Guard. So veterans that were part of the National Guard had to serve for at least 6 years in order to receive the points needed to qualify for VA benefits, VA home loan benefits. Or they had to be activated for active duty for a period of at least 90 days under Title 30 or 28. I can't remember the name, but like active duty overseas in order to be able to qualify for the VA home loan.
Yeah, I dealt with that actually one time. I had somebody who was deployed in Japan, and we had to wait till he had so many more days in Japan before he was eligible because he was reserve. He was inactive.
Yes, yeah. And now the biggest change is reservists, National Guards, they are going to be able to qualify for VA home loans having the Title 32, which is local services, like, maybe you just got dispatched to another state for a mission, or even, in-state missions. So Title 32, that's what it means. So those are going to actually be qualified, but you have to have just 30 days of consecutive activation plus a total of 90 days of activation. But the first 30 days have to be consecutive, meaning 30 days straight active duty. Then you had like 7 here, 7 there, 15 there.
That's what I had.
Yeah. So a total of 90 days. And
Yep.
Now it doesn't have to be, overseas. It can be Title 32. As soon as you have a cumulative 90 days and at least 30 days consecutive, now you're actually eligible to qualify for VA home loans instead of having to wait the 6 years of service as it used to be before. So pretty awesome. I feel like we get dispatched for services as National Guards and reservists all the time, but that never counts for anything, unfortunately. And now it's going to be counted towards the VA home loan benefit. So
yeah, and that's really good. That'll help a lot more service members, be able to utilize these benefits that the VA offers.
Exactly. It's going to increase the pool of potential buyers being able to qualify for a VA home loan, which is what we need right now. It's great. They all should be entitled anyway. They're serving, right? So they're just expanding that pool of qualification.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that a lot of realtors see a VA loan and they kind of run from it. But really, they shouldn't. It's easy. It's very easy to close. DTI isn't as big a factor as when you're dealing with, FHA or conventional. Some clients are conventional buyers, like they qualify conventional, but they're service members. They should be able to use their VA, And when I have those type of situations, I call a listing agent on the property they want to put an offer on and say, hey, listen, like this is going VA because they want to use their rate that they're given, but credit is 760, 780, income is fine, residual income is there. And it helps, and most of the time they, unless someone comes in with a cash offer, they'll get it.
Exactly. I feel like that misconception happens because technically, and not many people may even know this, the VA loan benefit does not even have a minimum credit score, and it does not have a DTI requirement at all. What does imply that, impose that, is the lender. The lender have their own minimums for certain types of loans. So every lender may input a different guideline for the VA loans that they provide, right? So some lenders may say, oh, we go as low as 520. Some others say 580. Some others say, oh, I need at least 620. But that's an imposed by the lender minimum requirement.
It's called an overlay by the lender.
Yeah, it's regulated by the lender. So every lender will have a different guideline, but the VA itself doesn't impose any minimum credit score requirements or DTI.
No, the biggest thing, I would say the biggest thing on VA loans is residual income. It's a calculation that we do. Exactly. And as long as your residual income is there, your DTI could be 60%, you're still going to get it.
As soon as you have that residual income, that makes sense to that lender for their guidelines. Yeah. Yep. And also now with the new COE process, the veterans can just go in the eBenefits portal website and request their COE. And it's fairly easy nowadays to obtain the COE. If you have served at the active duty, or had an activation of active status, usually is issued automatically. But if you are one of those people in a situation that you need to count the points because you did so many Title 32 services, or you were a reservist for pretty much the entire time, so they may take a couple more days to issue that to you. But it's all done by the veteran through the benefits portal, super easy. Some lenders may have access to request that on your behalf. I think you do that too, right, Carlos?
Yeah. Usually, we just ask them for their DD-214 when they're no longer in service. Then we'll get the COE for them when they're in service. They can get it fairly quickly. I haven't really had anybody in service that's like, oh man, I'm struggling to get this. They can go to their commanding officer and be like, hey, how do I get this? I'm trying to do this, and they'll guide them.
Yeah.
The problem is when they weren't service, when they're no longer service members, I just say, hey, just give me your DD-214 and I'll take care of it.
Yeah. And I mean, just reminding too that if you were a reservist, you were never going to be issued a DD-214. It will be a variation of that. I can't remember what the form name is, but it's basically just showing that you were released honorably, but you don't necessarily get the DD-214 because you're not a veteran per se, unless you had active duty service done. But that's the biggest difference between reservists and the active duty.
Gonna say, whoever's watching this and they're in service and they know the name of the form, please drop it in the comments. We have it.
I know all the recruiters out there are gonna know, so please chime in. They know all the forms names and everything. Yeah, I can't remember. I've been out for a little bit. I used to know all of the
that could have been a good myth of the day.
That could have been. That's true. Well, no longer now.
Hey, there's always next year.
Yeah, people forget, right? You guys are going to forget. I know you will.
Yeah. We'll forget the name of the form too. Don't worry.
Yeah. So that's the main updates there. Now getting a little bit into property types and renovation options available for VA veterans and VA home loans. So VA does support purchases and also supports renovations, because there is a renovation loan option for veterans using the VA home loan benefit, which it can be super handy in different situations. I think the most popular one being, what if an appraisal comes in, requires repairs, the seller doesn't want to do it, now what, right? That would be a very good example of us being able to actually put those repairs under a VA renovation option, and making the deal happen and not lose the home for that veteran. I think that's something that maybe is not done enough, but it is an option available. And one thing that I learned on my masterclass for VA that I didn't even know is that you can actually submit a request to the VA when you are under contract. If you don't want to pursue a renovation loan option, you can actually request that repair from the appraiser either be waived if it's nothing crazy. Sometimes they will allow it. Most of the times, if it's a safe to guideline, they probably won't. But they may allow the veteran to take care of that post settlement, which is something I didn't know it was an option. But you need to submit this request to the VA directly when you are under contract. So I think that's something that I don't even know if you knew, right?
I didn't. I mean, I have to get back to
I never
you on
ran
that
into
one.
that myself. So when I did the class, I'm like, wow, I didn't know. I thought we
Yeah,
were
I
stuck
didn't know
having
that
to do
one
it.
either. But if it's allowed, I'll probably be able to do that too.
We'll assist you.
Just
We'll
just
find
because
out.
we don't have any overlays, with
Yeah.
any programs, like we'll do, if the person has a 500 and the VA wants the deal, we'll do it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't. We don't have any overlays, so if you can do it, then yeah, we can do it.
Yeah. No, it was just interesting because the VA representative was there, and he said there's so many ways to handle a VA home loan transaction. There's so many different revenues that we just don't know because we're so used to the other loans that are very, it is what it is. This happens, right? But with the VA, there's always resources that we can kind of go back to. And this is one of them where we can actually dispute any sort of repairs requests from the appraisal. It's a much easier also to come back to the VA appraiser and request a reevaluation of value if the value didn't come in right, which for other loan types, usually it's pretty much set. And if you go back, they're not really interested in changing the value, even if they agree
Well,
with you.
I can't. I'm gonna go with. I don't agree with you on that one.
You don't agree? Oh,
No,
I'm on
no,
the
because
realtor
we
side.
have
I'm like, ugh.
no, because we do have reconsideration of value. Like we send like if an appraisal comes in lower, and we can and the buyer's agent, listing agent get together and they get me good comps, and it's just comps that the appraiser didn't use.
Yeah.
We will get that adjusted, to a fair market value.
Well,
We
you're gonna
don't.
send to the appraisal management company, but they may or may not adjust the value.
Yeah, so we don't have an AMC per se. We have an appraisal desk, so it works a little bit different, and they work directly with the appraiser.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So yeah, so if it makes sense, they will
You're
adjust.
better. That's what you're saying, Carlos.
Hey, you said it, not me. You said it, not me.
But a lot of the banks work with AMCs.
But yes,
And
and generally you are correct, just not in this case.
yeah, you have your own, so you're better. You see,
Yeah.
guys, you hear that? You heard it directly from the source right now. I just found out that Carlos is even better yet because of it. So just so you know, not all lenders do that. And
Yeah.
a lot of the AMCs do not want to take the hit for readjusting value, because they do take a hit if they do a reconsideration of value.
Yeah.
They're less inclined to say, oh yeah, or adjust the value.
Yeah, I've seen it, excuse me, where it came back, from other lenders, and they're like, yeah, no, kick rocks, like I'm not changing this. But in this case, yeah, like usually when it comes to us and there's an issue, as long as it makes sense, we'll do it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like, don't send me, single detached homes in a
To
good
compare to a
neighborhood
townhome.
comp for a row home. You know what I mean? Like, come on, what is that?
Yeah, let's be reasonable, right?
Yeah, that's what I said.
No,
Within
for sure.
reason, within reason, we will make the adjustments.
Yeah. But like mentioning about the VA has a very different process as well, kind of like what you do then, because they're actually more than willing to reevaluate because they don't take hits. They're more than willing to try to help that veteran make the deal go through with the value that needs to be.
Yep.
You know, as soon
And
as
if I'm not mistaken, I know USDA does it, I think VA does too, where if the property over appraises, you can finance up to that to lower the closing cost on the VA
to help that
for the buyer,
yes,
essentially.
so that way they can get more credits back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that in the past whenever, we were seeing high appraisals coming back, and it was always a beauty because maybe we couldn't negotiate up front seller's assistance, but then when he came back the appraisal came back higher, we were able to just up that purchase price slightly and get the buyer additional assistance. So that's a pretty big bonus when that happens.
Yep.
Yeah. Alrighty, so we mentioned this already on our myth about the seller's assistance being capped at 4, but technically can go higher than that. One thing that we didn't really discuss was the VA funding fee that is used on the VA loans. So VA loans do not have mortgage insurance, right, Carlos?
No. The VA loan has the funding fee, and some of them are exempt. Like if they're 100% disabled, they don't have a funding fee. The funding fee is kind of like the PMI for VA, to give you an idea.
Yeah. And one thing that I learned in regards of the VA funding fee that I thought was pretty cool. So let's say a veteran is going to be buying a house now and using the VA loan. And they were already maybe planning on filing a claim for disability, but they haven't yet. If they file that claim and they have the claim open, not yet approved, but open in order to purchase the property, once that VA claim is approved, as soon as it was filed prior to buying the house, they can have the VA funding fee waived as well.
But that's prior to close is what you're saying, right?
Yes, it has to be at least filed. It cannot be filed afterwards, because afterwards it's only going to qualify for the next purchase. But if they file the claim while they're under contract, right, before they close, and they get approved, of course they have to get approved, then they can get the reimbursement of that VA funding fee they paid at closing back.
Now let me ask you a question. Normally, because I thank you for your service, because I never did it, so I gotta ask you, since you know more about this. How long does that process normally take to get approved once you file?
So it depends on the claim itself and the type of injury, and if it needs a doctor visit. So there's like variables, right? If you're talking about like a hearing one, which is a very popular one, that people claim for loss of hearing from shooting or whatever, that one on average is about 3 months. So if you file when you are under contract, maybe 2 months after you close, you might be getting that approval back. And if you do, that's when the VA will reimburse you for the VA funding fee.
Oh, okay. And will they reimburse you like cash, or will they reimburse you by lowering your loan amount and adjusting your payment, like a recast type deal?
That is that one that I don't want to answer because I don't know
Okay.
the specifics. I never had someone actually tell me, oh, this is how I got it back.
Got it.
The VA representative said that you do get the reimbursement, so I'm not sure if it's an abatement from the loan or if it is a cash value. That would be a good question. Maybe we'll have
next year. We're gonna answer that, folks. Don't you worry.
I'll send an email to him. I have his email. I'm on his inbox.
And any service members that are watching that were able to do this, please leave it in the comments so we can talk about it.
Yeah, if you guys actually had that happen and you did get your reimbursement, either cash, let us know. Yeah. That'll be awesome to know. Oh, a common misconception, right? We talked about how VA buyers are constantly seen as maybe not as good as a borrower to a potential seller because, zero money down, they probably don't have money, they probably have a bad credit score because there's no minimum credit score requirement and all that stuff. So the misconception is there. But there were some statistics done nationwide, and you will be amazed of what they came back with. So guess, Carlos, and you have the notes that I have, so you don't need to guess, but guess what would be the national average credit score for veterans using the VA home benefit? National average for VA home buyers for credit score.
You know what? I'm not even gonna look at the answer. I'm gonna go with the 600.
600 even, or like 600s?
I'm gonna say like a 620 average.
Okay, you see, that's why it's a misconception. Believe it or not, the national average credit score for a home buyer using VA home loan is 718 points. Wow. They have over 700 credit score. So technically, they could even try to go for a conventional.
That's what I was explaining earlier. Yep, that they qualify even as a conventional.
Some buyers could go higher. Some buyers might be lower, but on national average is 718, which is pretty high for looking at buyers that supposedly are not strong buyers. Now, another big misconception is like, oh, they're putting zero money down, right? The national average statistics from 2024 shown that the average buyer for VA home loans is actually putting 10% down on average on their VA home loans. Now, national averages, of course, going to vary, from local areas. But the national
10%. Okay.
10% down, even though there's zero money down buyer.
I mean, and just to come back to the credit thing, because I am honestly shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have an average of 718 when they have no minimum scores. That means there's a lot of 800s.
Exactly.
A lot
of them. To bring that ratio up, it's all about using the benefit, not because they are poor buyers, just because they're using their benefit that they were granted for their service. And honestly, that's the most frustrating part to me as a veteran, but also as a realtor working with veterans, is that the misconception is there, unfortunately. And yes, there are some veterans that need the support because really they are not in the best place. But on average, that's not the case. They're just using the benefit they were given for serving their country. So yeah, we need to reshape the thinking of VA home loan buyers. It is not what it seems just because you're putting zero money down, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
And VA appraisal.
That just goes to prove it. I mean, that just goes to prove it that, there are solid VA. I mean, all the realtors, following us and watching us, I mean, the national average is 718 credit score.
That's huge.
That's crazy. I was thinking like 600, 620, considering all the 400s,
I know. Yeah, so that is a pretty big change. And I think the one of the newest changes as well, and that it's coming because of the NAR settlement and the changes on the buyer agencies and commission payments and whatnot. So now a veteran is allowed to pay up to 2% on buyer's agents commissions, because before it used to be that the VA buyer could not pay any commissions whatsoever. Everything had to be on the seller side. And then that became, a problem with the new guidelines of like negotiating. Maybe the seller is looking into offers that the buyers may be paying their buyer's agents commissions. So they decided to make an adjustment and allow, and then that's an optional thing, of course, they don't have to, but if they want to offer, as, hey, I'm going to pay for my agent's commissions, they are allowed to do that up to 2%. And that is a big change. And
that's huge.
It is huge. It's going to assist that, veteran to make a stronger offer if they want to and can afford to do so, doing these competing situations that we're having in our market as of today. So
Yeah, it's gonna be
huge.
huge. That's gonna be huge for service members and and ex-service members, if that's how you would say it.
Yeah, ex-military.
Yeah, active and ex.
Yeah, that doesn't sound as good. And I think
Well,
the other
active and inactive service members.
active and inactive, yeah, and that's better. Another thing too is that they are also allowed to do escalation clauses. A lot of people thought that they couldn't, but they can do escalation clauses, meaning putting in a form where it says they're willing to go up to a certain max amount in increments of X, right? In order
Yeah,
to be
there would
competitive.
be no reason for you not to be able to do that, because if, let's go with, you're approved to 300K, you can start it at 270 and you already have an approval realistic of 300K. So there wouldn't
Yeah,
be a reason. It's the same as an FHA, conventional
same
USDA.
thing.
It's all the same. As long as you're approved up to that level, then there's no reason you shouldn't,
Yeah.
not be able to do it.
And another thing that some agents and potential consumers may not know is that the VA buyer can, if they want to, offer to pay an amount towards an appraisal gap. I think there was a lot of questions of like, oh, if they cannot pay certain things, can they even do that? Yes, they can, because they can put whatever down payment amount they want. So if they're looking to buy a house at 300, the property appraised at 280, and they put an appraisal gap of 10, well, they can buy the house at 290 then, because they can put $10,000 as the appraisal gap. So yes, the veteran is allowed to do that as soon as, of course, they have the funds to do so. But it is something that is allowed. The VA has no problem with that. The only, caveats that they are only going to loan up to the appraisal amount, period. But what the buyer decides to put above and beyond on top of that, that's the buyer's predicament. So, they can offer to pay any appraisal gap amount they want. So yes, a VA buyer is like any other buyer. If anything, it might be even better, because that loan, it's guaranteed by the VA. It's a very guaranteed VA loan. So it's not like a backed government loan like an FHA or USDA. It's a guaranteed one. So there's a lot of perks that come with that, not just for the buyer, but also some guarantees on the seller side. Like they have to be pre-underwritten in order to go through, meaning they have to have a certificate of eligibility ahead of time, to obtain that benefit. And with that comes certain qualifications that the lender have to do, right, Carlos, in order to proceed with that VA home buyer. So, yeah, I spoke a lot today. You can talk more.
I think we covered a lot today.
We did.
Tons
of good information for our veterans on
absolutely,
the 4th of July.
Absolutely. It was very, very veteran oriented, which was the whole point of it. A lot of good things that people should keep in mind, especially people that are listening to this. National average is 718.
Remember that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, holy cow.
The national average percentage of down payment is 10%.
10% down on
even though they don't need to.
That's bonkers.
Insane. Like, I would never have guessed that.
And I think that number, now that we're talking about it, I think that number is driven through the bonus entitlements, because they end up putting a little bit more because they don't get the full 100 sometimes. I think that's what's driving that number. So that number is not as surprising to me as the 718 FICO score on average. Like, that is
the big one.
What?
Strong buyers.
That's nuts. Yes. So a lot of good information. Remember, if the house overappraises, you can use it to lower your closing costs even more. You can have good credit.
Veterans can do the oral benefit, right? And refinance.
Yep. You do it's called the interest rate reduction refinance loan.
Yeah, it's RL. Mr. Earl. It's a pretty good benefit. So you have lower fees and there's no cost. Some parts there's no cost to do the refinance and get a lower interest rate.
The costs are minimal compared
Very
to a
minimal.
regular loan.
Yeah, yeah, and it can be used after 6 months to buy.
Yep.
Yeah. Alrighty. So again, if you like this and you want to see more of this, what do we say?
Like, share, and follow for more.
Alrighty, so that's it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. There was a ton of information. Hopefully you just remember that VA buyers are strong buyers too. Make sure you know, not knocking out the buyers that are military out of the picture. Please understand they're using the benefit because they earned it, okay? Not because they need it. So respect your veterans. Look at their offers the same way with the same grades that you look at any other offer. Because they deserve that, right? They deserve at least.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Happy 4th, everyone. We'll see you next time.